So let's see here. Unit 1, lesson 15, compare and contrast. Let's see, make sure everybody gets in here first. All right, so today, something familiar again, compare and contrast. So by the time we complete this lesson, you'll be able to compare and contrast, sort and analyze information, group details and events and people by similarities or differences, and use signal words to find similarities and differences. And I think one of the things we'll find with fiction, more so with nonfiction, when it comes to comparing and contrasting, we'll look at characters a lot and characteristics and details, pertaining to, the people involved in these passages. So it'll be a lot of comparing and contrasting of different, traits and so forth. So let's take a look at our audio. Okay. Here we go.
Authors use comparisons and contrasts to describe the people, places, or conflicts in their stories. When authors make comparisons, they show the similarities between two or more elements. When they show contrasts, they emphasize the differences. Comparing and contrasting can help you sort out and analyze information. You can group details, events, or people by their similarities and differences. As you learned in Lesson 6, signal words such as likewise, in the same way, similarly, like, and in like manner indicate similarities. Signal words such as on the other hand, however, whereas, unlike, and but indicate differences.
So we're back to that idea again as far as signal words. So look for those words that are going to indicate, a comparison or a contrast. So they're either going to signal similarities or differences, right? And so we're starting off with Emily and Susan, and this is from I Stand Here, Irony by Tilly Olson in 1961. And it says, oh, there are conflicts between the others too, each one human, needing, demanding, hurting, taking, but only between Emily and Susan, no. Emily toward Susan, that corroding resentment. It seems so obvious on the surface, yet it is not obvious. Susan, the second child, Susan, golden and curly-haired and chubby, quick and articulate and assured, everything in appearance and manner. Emily was not. Susan, not able to resist Emily's precious things, losing or sometimes clumsily breaking them. Susan telling jokes and riddles to company for applause while Emily sat silent, to say to me later, that was my riddle, mother. I told it to Susan. Susan, who for all the 5 years difference in age, was just a year behind Emily in developing physically. I am glad for that slow physical development that widened the difference between her and her contemporaries. Though she suffered over it, she was too vulnerable for that terrible world of youthful competition, of preening and parading, of constant measuring of yourself against every other, of envy. So it says at the top, the narrator contrasts two sisters, right? Susan and Emily. The narrator first describes Susan and then says that Emily is not the same at all. So largely a contrast between the two. And then the narrator continues to emphasize the differences between Susan and Emily, explaining that Susan is outgoing and amuses her audience, whereas Emily is quiet. So, we were dealing with exposition yesterday, and this would give you a background on both of those characters, the details of physical traits. All right. So let's take a look at the quiz. So lesson 15, quiz, compare and contrast. And we've already talked about Venn diagrams, right? And that's a great way to think of comparing and contrasting. So a Venn diagram is a useful tool for organizing comparison and contrast. comparison of Emily and Susan might look like what they have here. So Emily on one side, Susan on the other, and then the traits that they both share in the center. And you can even think of, mentally, Venn diagrams. I don't know if our brain necessarily organizes information that way, but if you are running into something and you need to make a diagram to help you with with comparisons and contrasting, that's a good way to do it. Make those two overlapping circles, list everything that's different about the one on one side, different on the other side, and then you can put what's in both in the center. So that's a good way. And again, we see really simple Venn diagrams. You could do 3-4 circles that overlap. It might get a little congested. Any more than that, it's going to get kind of confusing, but you can certainly do more than just 2 if you're comparing and contrasting things. Let's see, Latoya, can you read number 1 for us? Are you maybe occupied? How about Etta? You read number 1?
Can I read?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Which statement describes one way in which Emily and Susan are different? A. Susan is clumsy and ill at case in company, but Emily is not. B. Susan finds more riddles than Emily does. C. Emily enjoys sharing her possessions, but Susan does not. And D. Emily is slower to develop physically than Susan is. Well, I think it's A.
It's D. E as in dog.
D as in dog.
So Emily is slower to develop physically than Susan. And what's important about that is Emily is the older child, right? So the younger child is catching her in physical development. That was what they're pointing out there. Yeah, so D is in dog for number 1. Let's see here. Short passage. Sasha Gay, would you like to read difference in musical tastes?
No one will believe that I like country music. Even my wife scoffs when told such a possibility exists. Go on, Gloria tells me. I can see blues, bebop, maybe even a little buck dancing, but not bluegrass, Gloria says. Hillbilly stuff is hillbilly stuff is not just music. It's like New York Stock Exchange. The minute you see a sharp rise in it, you better watch out.
Okay.
Why I like country music.
We'll go ahead with the question 2.
How do the musical taste of Gloria and her husband contrast? Only her husband likes country music?
Yeah, country music, Contry. And we're going to read a little bit more, I think, from this piece. But what's kind of important to point out here too is that Gloria and her husband are African American. So there's a bit of humor when she's talking about, hillbilly stuff is not just music, right? If it's like the New York Stock Exchange, the minute you see a sharp rise in it, you better watch out. And so we'll take another look here. Question 3. Let's see, Tracy, you want to read question 3 for us?
Yes. a difference in musical tastes. No one will believe that I like country music. Even my wife scoffs when so much a possibility exists. Go on. Gloria, tell me. I can see blues, bebop, maybe even a little buck dancing, but not bluegrass. Gloria said. Hillbilly stuff is not just music. It's like the New York Stock Exchange. The minute you see sharp rise in it, you better watch out. From the Western, Gloria compare hillbilly music stock exchange implies that she implies that after the sharp rise in the stock market, what comes next is sharp. I think blue rust.
So
You
it's
drop or fall.
it's making a comparison between a sharp rise and then, what would the opposite be of a sharp rise?
Oh, sharp rise.
What was that? I think I heard somebody else.
Yeah, fall or drop.
Fall or drop. Yeah. I think drop is probably going to work here. So D-R-O-P. So it's, just saying, usually when we see like a big spike in something, then we're going to see a big decline. So same thing here with that type of music or that culture. We'll see a big spike in it, and then we'll see a decline. So 3 is drop. Right. Let's see. Grace, could you read Southern and Northern perspectives for us?
Okay. Read the passage, read each question and choose the best answer. I tend to argue the point, but quietly and mostly to myself. Gloria was born and raised in New York. She has come to believe in the stock exchange as the only index of economic health. My perceptions were shaped in South Carolina, and long ago I learned there as a waiter in private clubs to gauge economic flags by the tips people gave. We tend to agree on other matters too. But the thing that gives me most frustration is trying to make her understand why I like country music. Perhaps it is because she hates the South and has capitulated emotionally to the horror stories told by refugees from down home. Perhaps it is because Gloria is third generation northern born. I do not know. What I know is that while the two of us are Black, the distance between us is sometimes as great as that between Igbo and Yoruba. Should I go ahead with the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The narrator says that Gloria is third generation northern born. This information is important because it A, contrasts her background with her husband's. B, implies that her husband is also from the north. C, emphasize her indifference toward the north. And D, shows that she and her husband have similar beliefs. Is it A?
Yep, it's A, right? Contrasting their backgrounds. He's from the South, she's from the North. That really shows, a difference between the two. Especially when we're talking about like musical taste, right? And things like that. So culturally, there's a difference. And they use this kind of weird analogy, right? He says, between us is sometimes as great as that between, I think it's actually Igbo or Igbo and Yoruba, and those are African tribes in the I think in the Sahara.
Nigeria.
Yeah, and they're like I think that different religions. I don't know which one's which, but I think one tends to be Muslim and one tends to be Christian. But the thing is, they're very culturally different, and so a lot of readers wouldn't recognize that. But it's sort of like saying, oh, this is they're as different as night and day. Right, that's something that it's sort of a more common phrase there. But yeah, so there's a cultural difference between those two groups of people, and that's what he's kind of comparing him and his wife to, being one from the north and one from the south. And so number 5, Edith, are you available for number 5?
Okay, it says the narrator says that his wife hates the South. Her dislike for the South most likely indicates that A, he too dislikes the South, B, they live elsewhere, C, they do not always agree, or D, she has never been there. Is it C?
Yeah, they just don't always agree, right? Which is often the case when people are from different parts of the country or different parts of the world even. So that's our 5 questions for the quiz. So a quick recap there. 1 was D as in dog, right? Emily is slower to develop physically than Susan, her younger sister. 2 was country music. Only her husband likes country music. Gloria does not like country music. We are not country music fans in our house.
Can you start over, Matt? I don't know what's going on with my computer.
Okay, sure. 1 was D. 2 was country. 3 was a drop. After a sharp rise, there's a sharp drop. 4 was A, contrasting backgrounds. And 5 was C, as in cat. Were you able to get caught up there? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and slide over to the workbook. If for any reason, along the way, I have everything already written down. So if you need to go back for anything, just let me know. So again, continue with the comparing and contrasting. Comparing, showing those similarities, contrasting, showing those differences. We use those signal words to help us along. And then, like it says here, the author compares or contrasts to help the reader understand more about a particular part of the story. And as I mentioned, like we saw, a lot of times it's about characters, differences in characters. So Gloria and her husband, for one, right? One's from the north, one's from the south. One doesn't like country music, the other one likes country music. Emily and Susan, physically developing different. One's shy, one's outgoing, one's growing physically faster, seems to be healthier. And that's what you often see in fiction writing a lot. And so here it says the narrator describes her daughter. So she fretted about her appearance, thin and dark. This is again from I Stand Here Ironing. So this is talking about Emily and Susan again. She fretted about her appearance, thin and dark and foreign looking, at a time when every girl was supposed to look, or thought she should look, like a chubby blonde replica of Shirley Temple. The doorbell sometimes rang for her, but no one seemed to come and play in the house or be a best friend, maybe because we moved so much. There was a boy she loved painfully through 2 school semesters. Months later, she told me how she had taken pennies from my purse to buy him candy. Licorice was his favorite, and I brought him some every day, but he still liked Jennifer better than me. Why, Mommy, why? A question I could never answer. School was a worry to her. She was not glib or quick in a world where glibness and quickness were easily confused with ability to learn. To her overworked and exasperated teachers, she was an overconscientious, slow learner who kept trying to catch up and was absent entirely too often. So more about Emily here, right? Just the one girl. And it says for our underlined spot here, the doorbell sometimes rang for her, but no one seemed to come and play in the house or be a best friend. And the narrator makes an implied comparison between other girls and her daughter, suggesting that she had fewer friends and was less popular. And then the second paragraph, the story about loving the boy creates a comparison between the daughter and another girl, Jennifer, whom the boy preferred. So this sad kind of moment where she was buying him candy and she, he still didn't like her. He preferred Jennifer over her. So let's start the workbook. Okay. And question 1. Sasha Gay, would you like to read question 1 for us?
Okay. How does the narrator contrast her daughter with images of beauty at the time? Her daughter is different because she, A, looks like Shirley Temple, B, does not understand what beauty is, C, is blonde and chubby, D, is thin and dark. Is it D?
D. Right. D, thin and dark, which is one of those things when it's important to read when where the excerpt comes from at what time, right? In 1961, the image of what was attractive was different, right? It was you think of like Marilyn Monroe, who was we went through a few decades where almost sickly thin was the trend, right? Thin and dark today probably wouldn't be, considered, a attribute that wouldn't be, attractive. And especially in decades past, body image stuff always going on. I think we've kind of, come over that a little bit, but in 61, it was the opposite. It was actually, like she said, blonde and chubby was actually preferable to thin and dark. So keep in mind, when you're looking at those, when was that written? Because it could also give you some context as far as what what the answer should be. So thin and dark at that time in 1961 would not be contrasted to her daughter, who's would be considered more attractive at that time. So D is in dog for number 1. And then 2, Latoya, can you read 2 for us? Maybe not.
I'll read.
Okay, go ahead.
How does the daughter compare with other students at school? A, she is not well behaved as others in school. B, she is not as quick and is viewed as a slower learner. C, she is more adaptable and pleasant than other students. D, she is more easily confused at school than other students. And I would say the answer is B.
Yeah. So yeah, it's saying compared there. She's just not as quick, viewed as a slow learner. And I think at the end there it says something like over conscientious slow learner. B as in boy there. Let's see. We'll trade off here some on this next passage. Tracy, would you like to read the first paragraph? The Kelby girls are shunned.
Okay, I'll start us off. You want me to start us off?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. The Kive girls are shunned. Playtime came and Isabel was surrounded. The girls of her classroom nearly fought to put their arms around her, to walk away with her, to being flutterily, to be her special friend. She held quite a court under the huge pine trees at the side of the playground. Nudging, giggling together, the little girls pressed up close. And the only two who stayed outside the ring were the two who were always outside, the little Kives. They knew better than to come around near the Burnells.
All right. Tracy, are you available for the second one? I don't know, maybe we have a mic issue or something. Oh, okay, there you are. Yeah. Naki, you want to go ahead and do the next one too?
Okay. For the fact was the school the Burnell children went to was not at all the kind of place their parents would have chosen if they had been any choice, but there was none. It was the only school for mouths, and the consequences was all the children in the neighborhood, the judge's little girls, the doctor's daughters, the storekeeper's children, the milkmen's were forced to mix together. But the line had to be drawn somewhere. It was drawn at the I don't know. I'm just going to call them the K's. Drawn at the
Kelvies. Kelvy, yeah.
The Kelvies. Okay. Many of the children, including the Burnells, were not allowed even to speak to them. They walked past the K's with their heads down in the air, and as they set the fashion in all matters of behavior, the K's were shunned by everybody. Even the teacher had a special voice for them and a special smile for the other children when little K came up to the desk with a bunch of dreadfully calming looking flowers.
All right. Let's try Tracy one more time. Not sure. I'm not.
Not
Looks like
hearing
you're.
nothing.
Yeah, you're. I don't know if you're. It looks like your mic's on, but we're not getting anything there. All right. We'll see if you can put something in the chat if you're having some problems or something. Let us know. Let's try Grace. Could you finish off the paragraph for us?
Okay. They were the daughters of a spree, hard-working little washerwoman who went about from house to house by the day. This was awful enough. But where was Mr. Kelvin? Nobody knew for certain. But everybody said he was in prison. So they were the daughters of a washerwoman and a jailbird. Very nice company for the people's children. And they looked it. Why Mrs. Kelvin made them so conspicuous was hard to understand. The truth was they were dressed in bits given to her by the people for whom she worked. Should I continue the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What do the Kelvins and Benners have in common? A, they attend the same school. B, they play with the same girls. C, they both like wildflowers. And D, they are both shunned by others. A, they attend the same school.
Yep. So 3 is A, right? They attend the same school. That's one similarity that they share. All right. We'll go on to 4 here. Etta, you want to try question 4 for us?
Okay, in paragraph 1, The narrator contrasts the children who are inside Isabel's ring with those who are outside it in order to A, show the difference in status, B, indicate a difference in ages, C, emphasize a difference in size, or D, reveal that not all children like Isabel.
A.
Yeah,
Uh,
A. Yeah. So what we're seeing here is a setup of a difference in status, right? It looks like economic status or difference in class between the Burnells and the Kelbys. A for number 4. Christiana, can you take number 5 for us?
Okay, number 5. The narrator says that the school is not at all the kind of place that the word is what? Is it
Burnell.
Braille? Okay, Braille parents would have chosen. How would a school of their choosing differ from the school in the passage? A. It would provide a better education. B. It would be closer to their home. C. It will not accept poor children. D. It would abolish social class distinction. I think it's C.
5 is C. Yeah, yeah. It would not accept poor children, right? Basically, they're a little bit of hotty toddy, kind of uppity family there, and don't want the dregs of society in their school. So yeah, so 5 is C as in cat. There for number 5. And again, the Kelby girls are shunned. So number 6. Let's see, Latoya, you take number 6 for us. No, maybe not. Nakia, you want to read number 6?
Okay, what does the narrator imply about the children who do not speak to the K's? Their family are concerned with fashion than the K's are. The families are better off than the K's are. The families have more social status than those families do. The K's are more educated than those families are. And I might want to, I think that it's B, that's my answer, but it could be C too, because social status was a big deal back in the day.
But in the case of C, it would be reversed. So it's the Burnells that have
you're right. So B is my answer.
Yeah. B is a boy. Their families are better off than the Kelbys. And this is another one of those kind of test taking things. Would you get the same passage and you're seeing similar questions like about social status and things like that? Those kind of help clue you in, get your mind sort of on the right track to start thinking about, okay, well, it's, there's a theme here, right? And the theme basically is the difference between these two families. So once you identify, which family seems to be the snooty, well-to-do family, then, a lot of the other questions are going to kind of fall into place for you. So 6B is boy there. So the Kelbys are the sort of worse off family in the situation. And I think, let's see, one more here. Tracy, I'm going to give you another try here, see if can hear you.
7.
On number 7.
Yeah. In paragraph. Okay. Yes. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. In the paragraph 2, the narrator states Even the teacher had a special voice for the color children. What the signal word even review about the teacher attitude toward the children. A, she is always equally fair to all children. B, she feels sorry for the clever girls. C, she, unlike others, is kind to the clever children. D, she, like other, cushion the clever girls. Even in the paragraph 2, could you find me the even in the paragraph 2? Even teacher had the last sentence. Even teacher had a special voice for them and special mind for the other children. When Blue Kayla came up her desk with a bunch of dreadfully common looking flower.
Maybe D.
D.
Yeah, D, right? She's going to shun them just like the others would. She's not as, any more friendly towards them as the rest. So 7 is D, is in dog. Okay, and Grace, could you read this paragraph for us? Narrator examines his heritage.
Okay. You will not know or remember, as I do, that in those days, in our area of the country, we enjoyed a pleasantly ionic mixture of Yankee and Confederate folkways. Our meals and manners, our speech, our attitude towards certain ambiguous areas of history, even our acceptance of tragedy as a normal course of life. These things and more define us as Northern. Yet, the stern morality of our parents, their toughness and penny pitching and attitude toward work, their covert allegiance toward certain ideals, even the direction toward which they turn our faces, made us more Yankee than Cavalier. Moreover, some of our schools were named for Confederate men of distinction, but others were named for the stern-faced believers who had swept down from the north to save a people back long ago. In those long forgotten days of once upon a time, still our school books, our required classroom songs, our flags, our very relation to the statues and monuments in public parks negated the story that these dreamers from the north had ever come. Question? Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay. The narrator describes his upbringing as an ionic mixture of Yankee and Confederate folkways. This description reveals that he A, agrees with neither Yankee nor Confederate ideas. B, identifies with Confederates more than Yankees. C, holds to both Yankee and Confederate beliefs. And D, identifies with idols other than Yankee and Confederate beliefs. Is it or C?
C?
Yeah.
C.
Okay.
It's a cat. Right. So, being someone from the South, being African American from the South, there's certain, things that he associates with, living there. But there's also things from the North, the Yankee sort of sentiment that he also identifies with. So that's what it means, ironic mixture. Being African American from the South, and also having these sort of characteristics of a Yankee. So C for number 8. Etta, could you read number 9?
Okay. Which detail does the narrator mention as a contrast between Northern and Southern ways? A, Yankees accept tragedy quickly. B, Yankees mortality is not very stern. C, Confederates understand history well. D, Yankees are careful with their money. Um, I don't know. A.
So it's D. D is in dog. Yankees are careful with their money. And I'll point out, it says, yet this screen keeps flashing, yet the stern morality of our parents, their toughness and penny pinching and attitudes toward work, their covert allegiance towards certain ideals, even directions towards which they turned our faces, made us more Yankee than Cavalier. So he's identifying, that sort of frugalness with the Yankee ideal. So D is in dog for number 9. Right. Christiana, could you read number 10 for us?
Number 10. It says the most likely reason the narrator describes northern and southern attitudes is to prove the is it? Please, can you the word
Superiority, prove the superiority.
superiority of northern ways. B, complain that schools are named for northern men. C, confirm that northern and southern practices are basically the same. D, show that it is a product of two different cultures. C.
D.
Or D.
Yeah, D is in dog. Right. So he's showing that basically he identifies with both of these, northern and southern cultures and the ways in which he does. And that makes it sort of, somewhat ironic, but that there are things that he identifies with on either side. So D is in dog. And then 11, see, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same passage. Sasha Gay, you want to read number 11 for us?
What comparison does the narrator suggest about the school book songs and flags of his area of the country? A, they agree more with the North than the South. B, they favor the South over the North. C, they treat the North and the South equally. D, they show only the best qualities of the North. D.
B. Yeah, B as in boy, they favor the South over the North. And we kind of get that, it says the names of the schools were Confederate men. Our speech attitudes towards certain ambiguous areas of history. Let's see here. I think there's another part where it was our school books, our required classroom songs, our flags, our very relation to the statues and monuments in public parks negated the story that these dreamers from the North had ever come. Right. So it's saying something that we've been dealing with in more recent times here. The statues of Robert E. Lee or Jefferson Davis and all this stuff that we found across the South. And what he's saying is by having those out there and the songs that we sung in school and, the Confederate flag flying in places, it almost looked like the North never came here. And that's kind of what he's getting to there. So B, they favor the South over the North. B as in boy for number 11. Okay, and so same passage again. Nakia, You want to take number 12 for us?
Okay, the author refers to the past as back long ago in those long forgotten days of once upon a time. What is implied by the comparison between the past and the present? A, people often think that the past is better than the present. B, some people's idea about the past are unrealistic and similar to fairy tales. C, the past was a long time ago and should not influence the present. Or D, the past should never be forgotten or it could be repeated. And I'm going to say D.
Did you say D?
Either D or okay, so I think D, and then it could also be I don't know, C. I would say the past was long time ago and should not influence the present. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's B. So some people's
Mhm.
ideas about the past are unrealistic and similar to fairy tales. We got to get that at the
End of the passage.
yeah, and at the beginning, you know, ambiguous is kind of an operative term there, right? So, you know, Confederate folkways, our mills and manners, our speech, our attitudes towards certain ambiguous areas of history, even our acceptance of tragedy is a normal course of life. But yeah, so there is an unrealistic idea there. And yeah, and then again at the bottom, right, not really accepting, you know, the real history there. And, you know, you go through the South and you might think, well, yeah, where was the North? You know, there's, you know, statues here and the songs they sing and everything else. So yeah, unrealistic and similar to a fairy tale idea about the past. So 12 is B, and yeah, that's kind of true today. They're starting to deal with it, and it's not easy for them. So 12B is in boy. And final thing, we're going to have one more passage here for our final 4 questions or so. Let's see here. Got a bunch of little paragraphs. Tracy, do you want to start with number 1 for us? Read that first paragraph.
Yes. A soldier's vest. Sometimes they of the infantry looked down at the fatal meadow which spread at their feet. Its long green grass were rippling gently in the breeze. Beyond it were the great front of the house have turned to pieces by shelf and by the busy acts of soldiers who had pursued firewood. The light of an old fence was now dimly marked by long weeds and by an occasional post. A cell had blown the well house to fragments.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and read a couple and we'll switch off here. So number 2's Collins of A Company said, I wished I had a drink. I bet there's water in that there old well yonder. And passage or paragraph 3, yes, but how are you going to get it? Grace, you want to take number 4?
All right. For the little meadow which intervened was now suffering a terrible onslaught of shells. Its green and beautiful camp had vanished utterly. Brown earth was being flagged in monstrous handfuls. And there was a masquerade of the young blades of grass. They were being torn, bent, obliterated.
Yeah, obliterated. Yeah. Go ahead and read 5 too.
Okay. There was a quarrel in a company. Collins was shaking his fist in the faces of some laughing comrades. Then, yeah, I ain't afraid. Go. If yes, say much, I will go.
Yeah, keep going.
All right. Of course, yeah. Yeah, well, you will run through that. You will run through that damn matter once, yeah. Wow. Collins said in a terrible voice, "You see now, at this ominous threat, his comments broke into renewed jeers. Collins gave them a dark score and went to find his captain. The latter was conversing with the colonel of the regiment. Captain said, Collins, saluting the standing at attention. In those days, all trousers bagged at the knees. Captain, I won't get permission to go get some water from that well over yonder. The colonel and the captain swung about simultaneously and stared across the middle. The captain laughed. You must be pretty tasty, Collins. Yes, sir, I am. Well, said the captain. After a moment, he added, can't you wait? No, sir. The colonel was watching Collins' face. Look here, my lad, he said in a pious sort of voice. Look here, my lad. Collins was not a lad. Don't you think that is taking pretty big risk for a little drink of water? I don't know, said Collins uncomfortably. All right, from A Mystery of Heroism by Stephen Crane in 1895. Which little best, okay.
Point before we go to the question, we're getting in the dialogue, right? So these quotations, the dialogue it's slang, and it's supposed to be, basically thinking about how, that individual soldier would have spoken. So, it's that kind of broken, regional dialect or something like that, like, darn ya, ain't you afraid to go, right? So that, like, the apostrophe after the T, right? Cutting off the word to, just to go. And, if you say much, I'll go. You can think about in terms of, that there's a thick accent that the author is implying when he's using that type of, incorrect spellings and weird punctuation and stuff. Yeah, Will, you'll run through that metter, right? Instead of meadow, metter, won't you? So, there's obviously a very thick accent that the author is trying to express when he has, that type of language in there. So Grace, you want to go ahead and read the question for us too?
Okay. Which detailed verse emphasizes the contrast between pre-war and post-war conditions? A, someone's home is torn apart from the wartime fighting. B, the wall might contain water for the soldiers to drink. C, the soldiers bicker as if they have known one another a long time. D, the captain and the colonel consult each other rather than consult the soldiers. Is it A?
Yeah, A. 13 is A. Someone's home's torn apart by war. And of course, I was smiling through all that because I grew up with people that talked exactly like that. So it's kind of, not that foreign to someone like me to hear somebody speak that way. So 13 is A. 14, Nakia, you want to read 14 for us?
Okay, it says, how are Collins and the soldiers with whom he is bickering portrayed similarly? A, every soldier is concerned with the welfare of the other soldiers. B, Collins and the other soldiers resent the captain and the colonel. C, Collins and the other soldiers' manners of speaking makes them seem uneducated. Or D, all of the soldiers are willing to take big risks during the war. How are the colors? I don't know.
Is it A?
So it's C. So it's just like I was talking about, right? That dialogue
I wanted to say C.
Yeah. So that dialogue is kind of inferring that, right? You know, that's something else that you'll see. You know, if it's broken English, I mean, slang, I guess I should say, and sort of lazy speak, right? When you're running words together. We're going to get into language arts later, and we're going to have a whole once we get into more of the grammar type stuff and talk about like commonly confused words and phrases, things like that. And a lot of it is because we just get kind of lazy, right, with our words. Things kind of run together, and we use weird contractions and stuff. Y'all. Right. I grew up in West Virginia, so that was, it's something you heard all the time. And here it can also, we also connect, slang and a lot of, sort of words run together, stuff like that, as being uneducated. And that's what the author's kind of, assuming here, with that type of slang and that type of accent. So C, 14, right? And let's see, Etta, you want to read 15 for us?
How is Collins contrasted with the captain and the colonel? Collins is hopeful, the captain and the colonel are hopeless. Colin isn't naive and impulsive. The captain and the colonial are experienced and cautious. Collins is brave.
Point out that's Colonel.
Colonel.
And
okay.
your guess is as good as mine why we pronounce it that way. But yeah, there's no R in there or anything. But yeah, that's Colonel, just like an officer in the Army or something, Colonel. So go ahead.
Okay. Collins is brave and fearless. The captain and the colonel are anxious and self-doubting. Collins is cunning. The captain and the colonel are straightforward. See?
Yeah, B, right? Collins is obviously a little naive. He's impulsive, wants to go get the water. Captain and the colonel are kind of like, are you sure you want to do that? They're a little more apprehensive about him doing this. So B is in boy for 15. And let's see, Tracy, you want to finish us off here on 16, our last question?
16, yes. How does the contrast between the natural setting and the wartime activity enhance the story? A. The contrast between the scenic natural setting, the repulsive wartime activity emphasize the beauty and power of nature. B. The peaceful natural setting emphasize that the wartime activity will end soon. C. The simple natural setting contrast with and emphasize the complex tactics required during wartime. D. The contrast between the tranquil nature setting and the violent wartime activity emphasize the destructive nature of war. I think A.
D.
D.
So there's this contrast between that, a wartime setting, and all that destruction, and something peaceful and tranquil there, a natural setting. So yeah, D is in dog for number 16. And I think for the most part, over the course of those passages, we did see more comparing and contrasting amongst or between characters. But in this passage, we also see a little more as far as the setting goes, right? And how some contrast there is going to also, and some of the words that they use, for the little meadow which intervened was now suffering a terrible onslaught of shells. Onslaught of Shells is telling you, that's a war setting. Its green and beautiful calm had vanished utterly. Brown earth was being flung in monstrous handfuls, exploding from the ground. And there was a massacre of the young blades of grass. They were being torn, burned, and obliterated. So all that, we talked about tone and word choice and style, a massacre of the young grass. So this tranquil, natural setting is getting destroyed. And, there's no, a harsh word like massacre is really telling you what's going on there. All right, so we'll run through. I'm getting some requests in the chat there for some answers. So we'll run through them real quick here for everybody. One was D as in dog. 2 was B as in boy. 3 was A. 4 was A. 5 C for cat. 6 B as in boy. 7 D as in dog. 8 C as a cat. 9 D as in dog. 10 D as in dog. 11 B as in boy. 12 B as in boy. 13 A. 14 C as in cat. 15 B as in boy. And 16 D as in dog. So everybody able to get caught up